Hey guys, Max Voltage here. This video has been a long time coming. I've been doing a lot of studying, and as many of you know, I've been looking a lot into EIP 1559, and I'll be doing my best to demystify many aspects of it and tie in a number of other things that are going on with Ethereum, and hopefully come up with some solutions near the end of the video. So I'll be going over what is it, why is it needed, why do the fees need to get burned, because that's obviously the key thing that miners don't like. Some of the other proposed solutions that unfortunately aren't going to work, so we'll go over a lot of those as to why they won't work. Also be going over how this affects miners, we'll be going over some numbers. So probably going a couple different directions as we go through this, but we'll be hitting a lot of the hot spots. So first of all, let me start out with what is EIP 1559. There are a number of aspects to it, but what it means to miners, and this is the big topic of conversation, is that the transmission fees that we've grown to love because they're paid to miners will not be paid to miners. They will be burned instead. So let's talk a little bit about what's different about post EIP 1559 after it's implemented, and why it's necessary to burn the fees. So prior to EIP 1559, so basically our current network is done on a current single price auction, meaning that when a investor trader wants to make a trade, he has to guess with a little bit of help from either their wallet or the exchange as to what price they need to place as far as fees go to make their transaction go through. No guarantees on that because there's no controls in place for this auction. So this particular auction, if you bid 20 of whatever and you really would have won if you got 10, well, too bad, you're paying 20 anyway. It's a single price auction. You have the possibility of overpaying, of paying too much. That's the way the current system works. So with this current system, miners have no control over what a trader investor is going to bid. So it is completely controlled by that. So with EIP 1559, what they're trying to do is to have a more predictable fee structure so that traders can have a better understanding of what to bid. So with EIP 1559, there is a given start to a base fee that's been discussed. So basically the new EIP 1559 is going to have a base fee and miner tip. We'll go over the miner tip in a little while, but let's concentrate on the base fee for right now. So that base fee starts at a certain point, and then if there is enough demand where there is a full block, the next block can go up in price for the base fee, up to a maximum of 12.5% for that next block. So when a wallet is trying to decide or trying to show the investor what do they need to, what the cost of that transaction is going to be, all they have to look at is the past, blocks, specifically the last block. The last block is going to tell you what the next block's base fee is going to be. The question that comes into place is, and this is still an auction part of this, is that if that previous block is 100% full, that means that some transactions didn't get in, and that only the ones with the highest tips went into that transaction. So the next one is going to have a higher, by 12.5%, it's going to have a higher one, but at what point, what tip needs to go in, that's going to be the unpredictable part of it. But again, it's still going to give a much greater predictability to the overall transaction fees to the investor. So the user experience when it comes to Ethereum is going to be much better. There's definitely been plenty of situations, and I've experienced this when I've moved funds from one place to another. When things are really, really active and the fees are high, and you say, well, okay, I'm willing to pay this much for the transaction. Well, it could sit for a while. If you're doing an arbitrage transaction, you're going to want your stuff to go through right away, and you're willing to pay a higher fee for it. So for those users that want to have things go through right away, it's better for them because they have a much better idea of what their costs are going to be, and on top of it, they won't be overpaying. Because with EIP 1559, if you say I don't want a transaction to exceed 20, as I gave in the previous example, and the transaction fee, the base fee was only 10, well, that means you're only going to pay 10 base fee. So this makes it a much easier thing to say for the person setting up the transaction to say, I want this transaction to go through as long as it doesn't exceed this fee, and they can have the faith that it's not they're not going to get charged necessarily that amount. It's not like an auction where they're overpaying. They will pay whatever they need to pay to make that go through because of the structure of it. So that's basically what EIP, the crux of it is as far as the fee structure. There's other things that are involved in EIP 1559 that will help to level out some of these swings in the prices, the transaction fees, because now the block size is not the same. It can go up and down depending on what the demand is. So if you have a 100% full block, and so therefore the base fee is going to go up. So yeah, the base fee goes up, but the block size actually can grow as well. It can grow up to as much as 2 times the size of the original, average block size. Basically the block size that we know, it can go up to 2 times. Now, if it gets to 2 times, the fees are going to be extraordinarily high that a lot of people aren't going to want to basically trade at that price either. So there's things that will basically keep it so that the average block size won't change. It's just the fact that it can fluctuate with transient demand along the way, which will help to level out those transaction fees. Again, better user experience. Maybe not necessarily better for miners, but a better user experience for the investor. So that's basically the crux of 1559. There's some other things involved, but for miners, that's where our main concern is. So the big thing is why do the fees need to get burned? So the reason why the fees need to get burned, so in a single price auction, the miners have no control over the investors. The investors define what that price that they're willing to bid to make that transaction. With 1559, the investors don't. That base fee is defined by a set formula. So there is the ability, because now it's an algorithm, the miners can actually manipulate that. Anytime you have any type of algorithm like this, somebody's going to find a way to manipulate the system. It's just a fact. As much as we'd like to say, everybody's an honest miner. Well, most of us are, but it only takes a couple of bad apples. So that's the reason why, under this proposal, why the fees need to get burned. So again, later on, I have some solutions as to how this can get balanced out, but I'm also going to show that may not be as much of a big deal as it's been made out to be. Given by itself, yes, it sounds horrible, but with everything else going on, with all the other factors, it may not be. So anyway, I'll get into that a little bit later. So let's talk about kind of some raw numbers. Because basically what I did, and I was on Discord with some of the Ethereum folks, Micah and Tim Biko, and Tim had actually asked for some numbers. So for somebody to come out and actually called out miners saying, yeah, nobody's going to be willing to do this. And I said, I'm willing to do it. So I provided the numbers based on the resources that they provided. So let me bring that up here. So basically, this original was set up by somebody, I think his name's Yorktown or something like that is what I think he's got as his name. But anyway, somebody in the ETH community had set up this. So I was basically just going by their example. So their example they gave was some set dates in time. January 21st of 2020, 2021, June of 2020, and September of 2020. And I looked at this and I said, that doesn't make any sense because one day in time is not really what we need to look at. We need to look at averages. We need to look at different points in time to get a better idea of, I don't know about you, but I don't really care that on September 17th I made $100 or whatever it was, if the rest of the time I'm only making $1 per day. So it's really about the averages. How much am I making on average? So that's what I did with the bottom calculations. So this particular calculation we're looking at here is the current calculation. And this was done, and really it doesn't matter what the hash rate is because this is really just about how the block rewards and the transmission fees compare in the current system versus the new system. And the one variable that nobody knows what's going to be is the miner tip. So in this particular example, I'm looking at 1%. I personally don't think the tips are going to be that high. But what the bottom line is nobody knows. It's been asked, and there is no data at this point to say what those miner tips will be. So the main thing I've been focusing on has been this 1% example. There will be some tips. I think 1%, probably something between 1% and 25% is probably more accurate. But let's look at the 1% example for right now. So under the current system, if we look at 1 month, the average reward per gigahash was 0.0667 ETH per day. So that's what that was. So then we looked at the 3-month average, and we were at 0.058. And that's very similar to the 9-month average. So if you actually look at the rewards, you can see, okay, June is when things started to pick up. Okay, so that's basically around your 9-month. Well, actually, this is around your July, is around your 6-month, and then your 9-month is taking into account some lower periods of time. So your 6-month basically has a lot of really good times in there. Your 3 months has good times in there as well, but it doesn't have this huge spike that we may or may not ever see again. So just wanted to show you that this is where this data came from. And you can see down here, you can download it into a CSV file. I just downloaded it and then calculated the averages from that data. Let me go back to the spreadsheet. Okay, so this is what we currently averaged over this period of time per gigahash, okay, in Ethereum. So, and actually this is based upon this this particular network hash rate. So, but as long as the hash rates are the same, we're really trying to figure out is what's the equivalent, what are we losing under everything else being equal, and what is the equivalent block reward if we were to say, okay, let's say if we add a block reward, an additional block reward, what would it need to be to make us even under a 1% tip example? Okay, so in this case, for the 1 month, again, we would be losing 38% of revenue with everything else being equal. In the 3 month and 9 month, we're about 29 to 30%. And then your 6 month, you're at around the same as the 1 month. And then 12 months, which obviously we know the beginning part of the year, there really wasn't much in the way of transmission fees. So this is expected to be lower. So really looking at the 3 month and the 9 month as kind of the real averages, we'd be looking at somewhere around 2.8 to 2.9 would be the block reward. So we would need an additional 0.8 to 0.9 in block reward to stay even with where we currently are. So this is data that I've been looking at, and we'll go over some of the other things as well, as far as some of the other things that are looked at as possible solutions. But we will be coming back to this block reward as the possible solution. But the question is what should the additional block reward be? If we went to them and said it needed to be 0.85 or 0.9, they would laugh. And I'll go through that as to why I believe that would be the case. And I think that there's a middle ground that we can get to. So going back, coming back to, okay, so I know I've kind of jumped to the end already to figure out what the solution was going to be. But if we look at some of the other things that were looked at, one of the things that's been brought up a lot is, well, why can't we just introduce Praguepow? And a few years ago, this was proposed and was almost implemented, but the DeFi community and the ASIC community got together and said, no, we're not going to agree to this. We will have a separate chain. This will break up Ethereum. And Ethereum group did not call their bluff. So with this history, I don't really believe that this is a real solution that would be implemented. There's a lot of things. People always talk about the fact that Asics cause centralization and therefore are lower security. While that may have been the case a number of years ago, now not so much. I mean, if you look at Bitcoin's network, it's all Asics. So, are we saying that Bitcoin isn't secure? Yeah. So that's a lot of people call on that example as a counter argument to that Asics are bad for security. So I don't believe that that's really the case. So basically, anything that tries to eliminate Asics from the network is basically going to be a non-starter with the Ethereum community. Right now, the GPU mining community, yes, we are against it. Even the ASIC mining community is somewhat against it as well. Not as much, but are somewhat against it. But we need to come up with a solution where we can all come together to some compromise. I mean, that's the bottom line. Somebody's going to lose a little bit. Somebody else is going to lose a little bit. But in the end, it will be for the better of Ethereum. And in the end, it will be better for everybody because things will be predictable. We'll know the way things are going to go. We know where and when things may change. So again, I'll go into that at the end when we get to the actual solution. So then you have increased DAG size. Again, that's just going to eliminate Asics. That isn't going to be a solution that they are going to implement. And some of the other things that people have talked about, they talked about minor revolts, similar to what the Asics did a couple of years ago. Again, that is only going to there's a bunch of things that the Ethereum development group can do. Right now, there's an ice age in place. There's discussion about delaying it. If there's a minor revolt, they probably won't. They probably will keep the ice age where it is or delay it a very short period of time to motivate the team to get proof of stake. So we'll focus on getting proof of stake in place. So it really is best to not have a solution that is antagonistic. So again, that brings me to what I think the end solution will be, which will be a possible end solution is a block reward increase. And one of the reasons why I think that that is a possible compromise is because um, some of the ETH team have mentioned that that a block reward increase is the best. Um, I forget the word they used for it, but basically it would be the best compromise. But that an EIP would need to be written. So that's something that I'll discuss at a future time, but definitely something that is possible. I've discussed, what it would take to write an EIP and that type of thing. I don't know if I'm the right person to do that, but it's definitely a possibility. So a number of other factors that come into play in this is let's take one at a time. First of all, network hash rate. So network hash rate right now is growing at kind of like with the value of Ethereum or where it was, it was growing exponentially. It was parabolic. Well, that's kind of where we are with network hash rate, and that really isn't healthy. Um, Everybody's FOMOing in. We've all seen it. We know what's going on. All of this will come crashing down in the near future unless something is done to kind of control it a bit, or Ethereum keeps growing. I mean, if Ethereum keeps growing and network hash rate keeps growing, then we all continue to make the same amount of money because those two offset one another. So basically, that network hash rate and the value, if those continue to grow together in parallel with one another, then we're fine. But as soon as they diverge one way or the other, I mean, if you have network hash rate that goes down and value goes up, well, then great, miners make more money, but that doesn't last because that just motivates more people to get in. So right now, I think we can all agree that we're at a very nice profitability point that can't last because it just motivates too many people to get involved, and therefore brings the hash rate up and brings the profitability down to a certain level. So bottom line is that it's always going to have an equilibrium point, and the only reason why we haven't seen that equilibrium point much quicker is due to lack of material. GPUs are hard to get. New Asics are hard to get. Obviously, pandemic has had issues or has caused major issues in logistics and things like that. So there's a lot of things involved in that. But bottom line is people can't get GPUs, or at least as readily as they could before, and can't get ASICs. And therefore, the network hash rate is growing, but would be growing even faster if it were not for those elements. So the other thing is there's something called the Ice Age. And the Ice Age right now is scheduled to go into effect in July. Now, the ETH development team has mentioned that they are planning on, they think it's a good idea to delay it. But if the miners were to revolt and not come to some agreement, they most likely wouldn't move that out. There's nothing that says that they have to move out that Ice Age. So along with any type of agreement in that EIP would be to propose a certain delay. Not sure what that would be at this point as far as how long, but maybe just a delay in the Ice Age until proof of stake comes into place, or 18 months, whichever comes first. And I mean 18 months from the implementation of EIP 1559. So what the Ice Age is it basically is a difficulty bomb, meaning that the difficulty increases at a much more rapid pace, which basically is the same thing as growing network hash rate, making it much more difficult for miners to make money. So driving more miners out, driving network hash rate actually down, and could lower security in the network if kept there for so long. The reason for that difficulty bomb was to motivate the Ethereum developers to complete proof of stake. That's why it was put into place in the first place. So any type of proposal would include delaying that difficulty bomb a certain period of time. So let me just make sure I've covered everything. One of the other key things is, when would this occur? So Tim Biko had stated in a recent tweet, it was in response to something that was much different. Basically, there was a DevCon conference, a development conference that was scheduled for August, and that was canceled due to obviously the pandemic. And that was this coming August, and in Bogota. So they made the right move of canceling it, because they would have to be planning for this all right now, and not knowing where things are going to go made a lot of sense. So Tim's response was, on the bright side, the odds of shipping 1559 before DevCon just increased. So obviously meaning that if DevCon was in August, the odds of shipping it before August was pretty much nil. And now that DevCon is going to be sometime in 2022, there's a much higher chance that they'll ship 1559 before that. So, and the other thing that that was mentioned, and this was in a conference call in December, and Tim again said this was because he was asked the question of, well, when would EIP 1559, when would that go into place? And he basically said, well, it would happen after the Berlin fork. And at that point, when he had the conference call, the Berlin fork was due to go into place in January. Well, we're at the end of January and they're not done. They still have one more thing to complete, and then it has to be tested. So I'm thinking it's going to be sometime in March. I'm not sure the beginning or the end of March, but they are almost completed with it. But with more work to be done on it, more testing, I think March is a reasonable date. So what he said in that conference call was no earlier than 6 months after the Berlin fork. And that's if everything goes right. And that's almost a direct quote of what he said. Well, we all know in development, especially history with Ethereum, everything never happens when they say it's going to happen. Everything gets delayed. So I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be the case here. So even if we said it was 6 months, that would be September. Even if we just said 3 months longer, we're still talking about the end of the year. So it's quite a ways away before 1559 will go into place. So it's nothing to absolutely panic about. What would be nice, though, is to know what the actual, what the structure is going to be. And because I look at EIP 1559 as a kind of like a halving. Halving is a construct that's used in many different cryptocurrencies. I mean, obviously, the most one we know and love is Bitcoin. It halves every 4 years. Others have different schedules, but I think if we use Bitcoin as an example, it would definitely show that what is being asked here may be a bit much, but it's really no different than a timing of a halving. So let me explain. So back in October of 2017, in fact, I have the graph here. So basically, I'm not sure exactly. I wasn't really involved back here, so I don't really know. But I look at this date right here. This is in October of 2017. It's at 3. Okay. So this was when they went from 5 to 3. And obviously, there must have been a few steps involved. But just for the sake of argument, let's just say August 2017. That's the last time they lowered the block reward. So if we look at a 4-year halving, that would mean that it would be not unreasonable to think that somebody would want to lower the block reward for Ethereum down to 1.5. So while obviously nobody really wants that, it doesn't change the fact that it's not reasonable. And there is, and I forget what the actual number, I think it was, I don't remember the number of it. 1057, I think, was the Praguepow EIP. I forget the number for there's a new EIP where somebody is trying to propose bringing the current block reward from 2 down to 0.5, 0.5. I can tell you if again, I on Discord all the time with these guys, and I'm constantly reading up on these things. And when it gets brought up, the comments that come up are basically like, "Gosh, I'm not really sure what that would do to the security of the network." And so, first and foremost, security is the most important thing. So they would need to make a very, very strong case that people wouldn't leave in droves to go mine something else or just turn their equipment off. And I think that would be an extremely hard sell. And that is the sentiment I hear whenever that EIP is brought up. Now, I think that EIP is brought up as a threat to miners more than anything else. As well, you should be happy with EIP 1559 because this is what we could do. But that's just my own personal opinion. So I think the more reasonable approach is, yes, there would be an expectation that block rewards would get reduced. So if we look at the fact that they're burning transaction fees, but not doing the halving, so basically a halving would be a reduction of an additional 0.5. So if we go back to the graph, actually I unfortunately didn't have it on here. So this is what I was referring to, this particular graph of October of 2017 being at 3. And then obviously eventually they did it at 2 2 years later, or about a year and a half later, and then it's been 2 ever since. So anyway, so if we go back to the spreadsheet, as I mentioned in this example, we're looking at anywhere between 2.8 to 2.9 or 2.85 to 2.9. Okay, that's an average. Now, if we look at it a little bit differently, if we say we take the 1 month average and the 12-month average and take a median between the two, then we're looking at something slightly lower than that. So really what I would look at is somewhere around, let's say, the 2.9 range. So if we take the 2.9, meaning that we need 0.9 to stay where we currently are with the averages, and with the assumption of only 1% miner tip, but we also look at the fact that it's reasonable to assume that they would be looking for some type of halving or some type of reduction in block reward around this time frame. And that would be 0.5. So if we take the 0.9, subtract the 0.5, my proposal would be 0.4, that we get a block reward increase of 0.4. So that is my end solution. And I have run this by a few people, and they think it is reasonable. Some people from the Ethereum team think it's reasonable. Not the specific number, but the proposal of a number. And I think that is something that could be proposed and could be accepted, especially if they knew that this would end all of this bickering and calm the markets down a bit, knowing that there's confidence that EIP 1559 is going to go into place. So this could be good for the value of Ethereum, which is good for miners as well, because if the value of Ethereum is going up and the network hash rate is continuing to go up, we're still making more money along the way. So between now and 1559, it's not just about when 1559 goes into place. If there's question about whether or not it's going to go into place because of the way the miners are reacting, that can also hurt the value of Ethereum. So there's a lot of things at play here. And again, also with that solution is a delay in the ice age. Anyway, love to hear you guys' feedback. I know I rambled a bit. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Please, please, please comment below. A couple other things I want to mention is there is a great video on EIP 1559. It's called "Can ETH Become Deflationary?" EIP 1559 explained by Finematics. They're on YouTube. Go watch that video. It's extremely informative. It's not very long. If you're really curious about what 1559 is about, that is an excellent video on that. That's kind of where I started, and it gave me a lot of understanding about it. So again, please comment below with your thoughts on this subject. If we can have conversations with the ETH development team on Discord that isn't just I don't like it. It really can be for the better of everybody. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. It's late, and I'm gonna go to bed after this. But let me know your thoughts. Thanks, guys, and talk to you soon.